Well, the reality is college is very expensive. I think it's crazy the amount of that college costs now, but it is the reality that we are facing. And we need to make strategic decisions based on what we can afford, what students can afford. And we need to go into this process with our eyes wide open. We don't need to just assume it's going to all work out, because that's how students end up in a lot of debt. And I just hate to see that. There are a lot of ways around some of this. So we need to be proactive to help that situation.
Welcome to Three Little Fishes. We're three sisters who grew up in the Midwest together, but have since spread across the country. I live in Los Angeles.
I'm in Nashville.
And I live in Philadelphia. We are all married with children. We've all had careers, but now we stay at home with our families.
We've all been through ups and downs that come along with life and have always helped each other through, shared stories, and laughed together.
We welcome all of you into our daily conversations and hope you have some fun with us.
So let's jump in.
What's up, fishes?
Hi.
How are we today?
Good.
I just wanted to do a quick little check-in. I'm so glad people are finding us. Please remember, friendly reminder, to find us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment. I'm loving all the comments. Please spread the word. We would love to have more fishes join us wherever you're getting your podcasts. And if you also want to watch us, you can see us on YouTube or Apple. But we would love to have you join us and continue to spread the word. All right, all. So this past weekend, you all came in to celebrate my birthday with our parents and Todd, and you all threw me a huge party.
That was so fun.
It was so fun. I was like, I don't want
Happy
a party.
birthday.
I don't want all
Happy
this
birthday.
attention. But I loved it, and I had so much fun. And I just want to say a huge thank you to you all coming out and celebrating, and to Tim and everybody who came to help celebrate me. I feel very loved, and it was a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, a lot of good food, a lot of Prosecco. So I'm feeling very full in all aspects of
when we get Dad to sing Barry Manilow, Copacabana at a party, well, you know it's a good time.
I know he did do that.
That was fun. Did anyone video us? Like, I'm kind of would love to just be a fly on the wall, and like watch that.
I don't know that I want to see that video, but
I definitely have pictures of it, and I'll have to go through. I haven't completely gone through all the pictures that were sent to me yet this weekend, so I will spend some time today going through that. But I hope so. But I loved it so much, and it was a ton of fun. And it's always sad when everybody leaves.
It was a great party. Happy birthday, Nancy.
Happy birthday. Back to reality.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming out.
Yes.
So have you guys all recovered from your travels?
No, not yet. And I have company coming today and tomorrow for just a couple days. So I came home and was like trying to get it together again. You know, when I'm gone, the house is fine, but it's like I need to mop the floors and make sure the bedrooms are clean. And, because we have 3 house guests coming.
I didn't get home till like
Grocery.
2 a.m. last night. I'm dragging a little bit.
Yeah, that's brutal.
So
sorry.
That's rough.
Travel is hard, and the time change because you're coming from West Coast.
3 hours is a lot.
I don't know what it is.
That 3 hours.
I feel like I have a black cloud over me. Like I thought it went away, and now I think it's back.
Your travel cloud.
I feel like you couldn't get a direct flight, which is always tough. And then you had to stop in Minneapolis. And I think for whatever reason, Minneapolis's weather always is a challenge. And whenever there's a little bit of rain or whatever, they're like, weather, ground the flights. You're delayed in the summer, you're delayed in the winter. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big storm that rolled through, and it just came about like out of nowhere.
Well, and you got there safe and sound. So that's like the most important thing.
I'm fine.
Good. So today we have something kind of special happening. we're talking about college, right? Like we're
We
talking
are.
about like the admission process.
Right.
And it has brought me screaming back to like my high school days. And I feel like that's a podcast in itself because I think that I've mentioned in the past that I'm a late
Yeah.
diagnosed dyslexic, and I was the third coming behind you and Kathy, who were very good students. So it was like the Kuntz girls, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
put Nancy in all these classes or we give her extra help. Like, well, she's a Kuntz girl. She's fine. She's going to get it. So by the time I got to high school, they put me in all the classes that you were in, like all these honors and advanced classes. And I could no longer compensate. And it was not great. It was not a great situation for me when we realized something was really wrong. But I will never forget the day that our counselor, we all had the same counselor at this point,
Mm-hmm.
and he brought me into his office and he sat me down and he was like, Nancy, you are a terrible student. You are not like your sisters. You are not very smart. And you are flunking out of high school. So I'm going to now have to bring your parents in. And, I hope that you marry well because you're never going to college.
What an
I
That
mean,
is
asshole.
I'm not I'm
That's
not
so
even making this up.
obnoxious.
I'm not even making this up, but you can imagine, like socially, I was fine, but school, academically, I really had the most
Yeah, that's rough.
horrible. I had a confidence problem. I felt terrible about myself. I was kind of hiding it. And then I have this guy telling me, you're never going to college.
Yeah.
You are never getting in it. And I hope that you marry well because otherwise, he
Yeah,
basically
you're
was like, you're going to
lost.
be, yeah, you're lost and on the streets. He's like, you are not your sisters. I'm like,
Yeah. I
oh,
think so this is a whole other thing. So we're not going to talk about whether or not people should go to college or not go to college. Kathy and I are in it. We both have seniors in high school. We're in the college application. Like we're at the finish line. We're kind of like getting there. And it really does speak to high school counselors have a lot of power. I mean, I think
yeah.
even our own dad, who is a doctor, super, super successful, I think his high school guidance counselor told him that his aptitude test said that he should be like a laborer and that he had no business going to college. And this is not to
Just
bash high school counselors, but they just have a very full plate, and to spend the time that you need in order to. In fact, I think I have a number here. So the American School Counselor Association says the ideal ratio of counselor to student is 250 to 1, which is still a lot of students to
250
manage.
students.
But that's not seniors, but it's their whole, like everything. But
right.
in the reality, they have more like 350 students to one counselor. And this
Right.
year alone, there are 3.8 million high school seniors graduating, and there are approximately 2,800 four-year schools out there. Now, that doesn't include the 2-year or the trades or whatever.
Right.
But it really, because Kathy and I are so in the thick of it, we really thought it would be interesting to talk to somebody that helps kids do the application process, because it is a process.
Right.
I mean, it's not like I applied 35 years ago or something like that. Like we had paper applications, we hand wrote stuff, we typed stuff on the
Right.
computer and
Right.
printed it out, but it was like ripping the little sides of the paper off of I don't even remember what you call those printers. It was just a different ballgame than it is now.
The printers that went zzz,
Yes,
zzz,
back and forth. Those
zzz.
dot matrix
Yes,
ones, and they
yes,
had
yes,
like the little
yes. Yeah.
rupees that you had to rip off. I mean,
Yes.
it was
Well, I
not
think,
the way it is
I mean,
now.
I think now too, also just trying to have your student figure out what's going to be a good path for them. Just because they're struggling now doesn't mean they're going to be. And life is a long time.
It is.
So
This
figuring
is a
out
drop in the
what is
bucket,
going to
right?
be your path in life
Yeah.
to set you up to succeed.
Yeah.
Like obstacles are going to happen in life. You want to set up a team that's going to help you maneuver them and
Yeah.
pivot to
I
figure
feel
it
bad
out.
that you had that experience with your counselor. I mean, I think that he, in general, because I know him, I,
I do
I actually,
too.
I did not test very well. And like for me, that was a hindrance as well. And I don't think he has the right to tell you, like, you're not going to be this or you're not going to be that. He has no right saying that. And he shouldn't even be in
Well,
that role because that impacts your psyche. And like you said, just because maybe you didn't do well in a class doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful in life. Like, look at you now. You
right.
have a master's degree. Like, you
Yeah.
overcame your hurdles. And
Right.
I just think that people shouldn't have that much say in a young person's life like that. Like, he's in the wrong job, you know?
Well, imagine if Dad would have listened to his counselor.
Right.
I mean, what would he have? Would he have become like a ditch digger?
I mean, I realize,
You know what I
Which is
mean?
fine. I mean, we do need ditch diggers, so I'm not saying that laborers are not bad, but
No,
yeah,
sure.
to decide for him what that path was is not right. Like everybody gets to, you want to set people up to figure out their
well,
own
and
path,
true, like
right?
when you're in high school, you're young. And it's like maybe you
Right.
weren't focused on that
Right.
at the time. It's like, who knows what was
Right.
going on? But it's not like it's a
Right.
life sentence. Like, you're never going to be anything because you did not do well
Did
Yeah.
in
XYZ.
your
Yes,
English
exactly.
class.
It's
Yes.
I mean,
ridiculous.
come on.
But I do
Yes.
think that's why, a lot of high school counselors, I think they get burnt out quickly. I mean, it's
Yeah.
exhausting to deal with all these
Yes.
emotions. Teenagers can be tricky. Some
Yeah.
are
Yes.
superstars, some are not. Then there's the middle of the road
Yes.
kids. So there's
But
so many
you
specialized
never
information
know.
that they need to manage. You got to figure it
Right.
out and give them
Totally.
the opportunity to be successful. And so I think that's one of the reasons I hired a college consultant back in the day, and she really listened to the kids and they landed places that they're very happy. We've got our last one doing the process now, and hopefully he'll land and be happy and successful. And I think it is a very interesting segment of the college business,
Right.
and it will be interesting to hear all the things that she has to offer and say and why she does it and how she does it.
So when
Right.
we first
Now, how
started this whole process with my oldest, I knew that you had been working with Valerie, Linda, but I had a friend here that recommended this other counselor to us. I mean, we
Mhm.
were just like, oh, because she was familiar with our school. I thought, oh, she might be a better choice because she's familiar with Episcopal and like will know all
Right.
about it.
Yeah.
And we started working with her, I remember in like the winter. It was maybe a little bit later than ideal, but I spent a lot of money with this woman and we didn't really get a lot out of it. And I was like, I kept like checking in, like, where are you now? Now it's like,
Right.
springtime and we haven't really gotten anywhere. And I said, what do you guys talk
Yeah.
about?
Right.
He's like, oh, well, she cusses a lot. And, it's like,
Oh,
I'm like, what? Like,
what is she cussing about? It's
she just likes to use
fascinating.
the F word a lot, the F bomb. Like,
Oh. Oh.
and she was like, I
Oh.
hope it doesn't bother you. But, I mean, I was like,
F
what
this,
are you
F
guys
that.
talking about then? Like, so I finally was like, this is not worth the money. I mean, maybe eventually we would have gotten there, but I was just like getting nervous. And so I talked to Linda, and I think that's when you said you should use Valerie. So we ended up meeting with Valerie and talking with her through Zoom because I'm in Philadelphia and she's in Chicago. And
Right.
I just liked her from the get go. And what I liked so much is just she's so personable and so upbeat. I was like, oh my gosh, you are exactly what I need. Like, I need, you know, you to take over this and just be a positive influence on him.
Like it sounds like a navigator. Like it sounds like she's a good navigator. So I'm super interested in meeting Val because I have not met
Yeah.
her. And my oldest is a sophomore in high school. So my high school start, as I just told you, was hard. And so I definitely don't want that for Riley, which it won't be, but it's a new world to try to navigate what would be a good fit for him. And so I'm excited that she's a guest today on our
Well,
podcast. So it's going to be
I think
amazing.
too is that she really does help you navigate through the whole process. And I'm certainly smarter now because I've already been through it once. And now our second son is going to be a senior this year, and we're also using her again. So I just did not want to have anything to do with the essay writing, filling out his core application. Like she and my son work on it together. And if they need my input, she'll be like, hey, can you sit in on this meeting? But for the most part, they do it all, which I definitely appreciate.
It actually eliminates a lot of distress in the family unit to have somebody help you. I think there are big companies out there and they segment everything. She's more personable and more individualized.
Yes.
It is a very big business. I think it is an amazing tool to have in your box for your student.
Yeah.
And it will be great to hear what she has to say.
Yeah. I'm excited for her to come on because she's great.
So this episode may be a little bit longer just because it's a great conversation and it's a lot of little nuggets, especially talking about this subject. So it's kind of fun to. I'm excited about it.
So today we have a special guest. Her name is Valerie Holland from Holland College Consulting, and we thought it would be super interesting to have a professional on to kind of talk us through the actual application process. So Val, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got into it.
Well, what I do is I guide students and families through the college admission process. I help them identify schools that align with their goals and their strengths and their values. I provide personal support in helping them craft their applications, developing strong essays, and navigating timelines. A lot of it gets down to navigating timelines. My real goal is to reduce stress with this whole process and empower students to make informed decisions about their higher education paths. That's really my goal in all of this. I think it's important to try and make a difference during this pivotal time in young people's lives. I want to help them craft an application that really reflects who they are. I think that so that they feel good about it and that they feel like, okay, these are my aspirations and this is how I'm trying to do it. So that's my goal.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think like one of those things that I'm going to key in on is like the timeline. It is so, each child is different. I'm on my third
Each
one.
child is different.
And this third one is not my like buttoned up one. So having that like structure for making sure everything gets like handled in a timely fashion is so important because we are in crunch time here in the fall.
So what I would ask, I'm going to just jump in. I'm going to kind of like go back a little bit because I have a sophomore in high school. When would a child start to use them or a family? And do they need it to get into college and give them that support?
It all depends on the student and the family, quite frankly. I start working with students usually sophomore or junior year of high school. The earlier, the better most of the time. Earlier planning allows me to help the students build a stronger academic platform and a foundation of extracurricular activities that's not overwhelming, but that does allow them to focus on their strengths. And then the timeline ramps up from junior year on. Right now is crunch time, like Lynn said. And so I'm meeting with students weekly and we're trying to get those essays finished and applications done. But I guess in answer to your question, I would say that it's definitely the earlier the better. And sophomore year is usually a good time to start.
Like the beginning of sophomore year or like second semester?
It doesn't matter. I mean, either way, I meet with students usually quarterly at that time about just to say, hi, this is who I am. My job is to get to know the students. The more I can know the students, then I can help guide them. If I don't know them, and then how can I help them write an essay about who they are if I don't spend the time getting to know them? So the earlier we form that relationship, the better.
Right.
The key is to create an environment that's not as stressful. And a lot of times with teenagers and parents bringing in a third party like myself, it's amazing how I can ask students to do things and they're happy to do it, and their parents ask them and nothing gets done. I learned that myself with my own kids. I was like, what is this process? They are not listening to me. Well, I'm the parent. They don't want to listen to me. But if you bring in a third party, you can kind of do no wrong. And if you spend the time to get to know them, then kids are receptive.
Yeah.
They want
Right.
it to please me. And they realize that, wow, this is kind of a serious process. There's somebody else involved. Not everybody's able to have an independent consultant. High schools do their best. They just have very large caseloads. So they don't have the one-on-one time.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think like our high school has a college consultant, but she also has several other kids. And I just feel like you kind of get put in like a bucket, and there's just not a lot of time spent developing.
Or they do things, in groups. Excuse me, and that's hard. Kids aren't going to necessarily speak up when they're in a group
Well,
setting.
I think like you're saying, the timeline is important because they do send us emails saying, hey, this is due. Your child needs to start working on this. But then does it actually get done? Like they had all summer to do what was supposed to be done, but like, does the kid actually do it? And so I'm
Right.
thankful for Valerie because I am working with her right now, and that has happened for my son, who is going to be a senior. Just keeping him accountable and making sure we're checking off everything. So I appreciate that.
Do you also help because so we all go to school in different states. Our kids go to school in different states. So it's like you think you're on the track of, the college track of where they need to go. Like, do you also have like an idea of what colleges are looking for, like what classes are best? And maybe you have a bigger net of colleges. Like everybody kind of has heard of like the big colleges, like out here, they're all the California schools like UCLA and USB and all USC and all those. Do you have a wider net of understanding how smaller schools work and what they're looking for and what they need?
I do, most certainly. Actually, I didn't just jump into this whole process. I went to UCLA and I got a certification in college consulting. When I had first heard about the field, I thought, oh, I better have some sort of education behind me before I dove into it. So I actually graduated from that program in 2006. And since then, I've made it a habit of visiting colleges and talking to admissions and doing a lot of reading to try to understand what each college is all about. There's a myriad of colleges in this country, each offering something a tad bit different. So, my goal is really to fit the college and the student, because there are so many different choices out there and so many different types of universities. And everybody's looking for something different. So that's where I come in.
It's a lot, right?
So how much different is it applying to college now versus 20 years ago?
It is literally like a brave new world. When I applied to college, my mom handed me an application. I'm totally dating myself. And she said, fill this out. And I think I applied to 2 schools, and that was the end of the program. Well, now, we're facing a completely different situation where, there's strategy involved. There's test scores, maybe not test scores. It's just such a different world. And I feel for the kids. I really do. I feel like for me, just trying to navigate this ever-changing admission process is one thing. And the kids are just sort of dumped in the middle of it. And they're thinking, oh, my goodness, what do I do? It just used to be a lot more straightforward. And now there are a lot more subtleties, nuances, requirements. It's constantly changing. So.
In some ways, it seems like it's a little easier because there is this common app that the kids fill out. And so it's not like every single school has its own stuff. But with that, I think the nuance really does come and play with a consultant, because you really hone in on the kids' skills, their special, like, I don't know, personality types, so that they can do a customized little essay too that kind of helps them set themselves apart, because not everybody is graduating with a 5.0 and a 36 on their ACT. You know what I
Absolutely
mean? So
correct.
I feel like it really is helpful to have somebody sort of like nudge you, like, think about this, think about this. Have you thought about this? It's so much bigger than I think what the kids would do on their own or with their overwhelmed high school counselor.
I think, that's a very good point. The Common App allows students to apply to up to 20 colleges at once. I am a big believer on doing your due diligence and research ahead of time and applying to 6 to 8 schools, max 10. And I've really stuck to that hard and fast rule with students. You need to know the schools that you're applying to. Some kids just apply to schools. They like the name, they apply to the school.
Yeah.
The reality of the situation is, they don't know if they are offering the program, if they're interested in what the student is interested in. It can be very, very daunting. And there are lots of little pieces to the college app. So there are lots of little exceptions. And so if you keep that number of schools down and you've done your due diligence and your research beforehand, which I definitely do with my students, the application process runs much smoother.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine.
Is it kind of like applying for a job? You like that cover letter of like making sure that you're not lost in a pile. Maybe that's what I'm hearing you say. Like you're kind of, that can help them have this extra special,
and
just
help
be
them decide,
noticed.
right, how do we want to, I guess, to say, market this student? How do we want the reader to understand who your particular student is? The Common App definitely allows for essays. There's one, the 650 word essay. I think you've probably all heard of that. It's a personal statement. But then in addition to that, colleges also, many of them require other essays. And so, it's a lot of work for these kids to be writing these essays. And in addition to that, then there's scholarship essays at a time when they're also trying to have AP courses, take tests, do their sports. Yeah. It's daunting for a lot of kids. It's a lot of work. So I tried, I guess my goal is balance for everyone. We do a little bit at a time so that when it's all said and done, they end up with a completed package that they're proud of. That's the goal.
Now, do you have any like special students you love working with? Like, do you love working with that like high achiever, or do you like working with like the kid that's like, they've got a 2.5 and we got to find them a home because they really want to go to school? Or
that's a question. Can you find a home these days for a 2.5 student? Like, are they able to go to college with a 2.5 and be happy somewhere?
I have found a college for all of my students. So
wow.
If they are in fact interested, now don't please understand me when I think it's really important to talk to students about higher education, also meaning community college, trade schools, specialized programs. I helped a student who wanted to go to culinary school. I learned a lot about culinary schools, and I helped her find her way in that regard. So it's not just traditional college. That is what I work with 99.9% of the time. Yeah. But I think it's important that we look at all aspects. And yes, there are colleges for everyone. It really gets down to the fact that I'm looking for an environment where the student can thrive and grow. It's not the name of the college. It's not the preconceived notion that the parent has of the college or the student. So much is about marketing these days. Yeah. And we're forgetting, we are trying to find places where our kids can grow and be happy and learn to be adults and learn.
Right.
And find their people. And it doesn't have to come with a name, brand, logo. Mm-hmm. Not that name brand logos are bad. I don't have a particular type of student that I most enjoy working with at all. I really like just a good kid who wants to try and find their way. It's not about, I've worked with kids that have learning disabilities that, lots of kids have issues in that department these days. My own daughter did. I've learned a lot about schools that specialize in that arena. So that's something that we need to consider. So there are schools for everyone.
Well, it's interesting because you did help we're helping my third child, but my first one landed someplace I never in a million years would have been on my radar. And she landed and is like the happiest person ever. And it's amazing to see the growth. I just never would have thought of it. She would have ended
Yeah.
up at a different state school or something. And then
Yeah.
my next child is like a pig in slop, couldn't be happier with where she landed. So I feel like it does, a college consultant can really open your eyes to other opportunities that maybe as a parent you wouldn't think of, because we're just not in the thick of it all the time.
That's
So
very true.
I'm
And
grateful for that.
colleges have a different, thank you. Every college has a different vibe. I mean,
Yeah.
they really do. You go out and kick the tires and you walk around and you think, wow, this, might be the sportsy, real spirited group. You might have another group where they're intellects and they have, knitting groups and kids are not as athletic. I mean, it's a complete mixture out there. And that's what's fun. And some schools offer it all.
Yeah.
So you suggest to earlier the better working with a student and the family, right? Or is it just really the student? Like,
No,
so
it's both.
so for Riley, you would be like, now we should be working with each other now, so you get to know us and we get to know you, and he gets to start thinking about, where he might want to go or what his goals are.
Exactly. And I can help him with curriculum planning. What classes should you be taking or thinking about taking? And sometimes we go in and we tweak that schedule to make it fit into something that's more desirable for a specific type of college.
Yeah.
For some reason, kids think that they need to participate in so many activities. And I have to constantly tell them it's about participating in a few things and doing very well. And so I try to hone in on that with them. Where could you be a leader? How do you want to be a leader? Do you need to learn how to be a leader? Those are important things that colleges pay attention to. And the sooner that I can work with a student, then the better off that we are.
I think Riley needs that support because he's a big soccer player. He loves soccer. He's a good student.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to encourage him and his counselor at school to get more involved other than sports at school. And he is struggling with that of just being like, I don't want to do a club, but we're like, it's important to get out there, give up a lunch once a week and, see what's out there. So that is something that we're currently talking about. Like he's, shakes his head at me like, what are you talking about?
and that's where I say, find your friends. Your friends are probably all wanting to go to college too. So grab a couple friends and go to a club together. You don't need to go by yourselves. Go with your friends. Pick something that is of interest to you or something that would apply to an area that you might have interest in down the road as a career, a business club. I mean, there's so many different engineering clubs, so many different clubs out there.
I think I heard you say once too, that a consultant, like if you look at it as, you wouldn't go buy your first house, like this big investment without having some sort of support. And it seems like that kind of really tracks with a college consultant. Like, why would I throw my child into this huge investment without having some sort of support?
Well, the reality is college is very expensive. And families are much more aware of return on investment. That's the reality of the situation. I think it's crazy the amount that college costs now, but it is the reality that we are facing. And we need to make strategic decisions based on what we can afford, what students can afford. And we need to go into this process with our eyes wide open. Mm-hmm. We don't need to just assume it's going to all work out because that's how students end up in a lot of debt. And I just hate to see that. There are a lot of ways around some of this. So we need to be proactive to help that situation.
I mean, what are some of the hurdles that you see, Valerie?
The hardest thing I think is probably how increasingly competitive the process is now. And the fact that it's ever changing and the policies are changing, are we test optional? Are we not test optional? Do I need to be doing this? Do I need to be doing that? The fact that parents are concerned about the cost of college, which makes a lot of sense. This didn't happen before. It was much more
Why
straightforward.
do you think that this has
when
happened? I'm just curious.
I think a lot has to do with, quite frankly, US News and World Report, forgive me for saying it, and the rankings. And then colleges had to all of a sudden start marketing to the student. And the minute that happened, we started seeing fancier dorms, more food selection. I mean, if you think about when we went to school, the cost has become prohibitive. And quite frankly, I don't need to see one more, tiger paw swimming pool at a rec center. Who's paying for that? The students are paying for that. And I know it's important, and we all want our kids to have a nice environment to go to school, but that's increased the cost dramatically. Yeah. There are more students going to school than ever, but for some reason the costs just keep climbing and climbing. Yeah. And it's insane.
I think my eyes were open when I went and toured some schools with my oldest. Just the food in general is unbelievable. I'm like, they didn't have this kind of food when I was in school. I got like my turkey sandwich.
And I'm not
or cereal. I'm like, I'll have,
I went to a school that had the worst food, and you know what? So what? We all survived. My dorm looked like a concrete prison, and I had the best time ever. It's a very different world. It's not as straightforward. Colleges are taking more of a holistic view at applications. It's not just your test score and your grades. It's what have you done? Who do you know? How have you become a leader? What jobs have you had? What have you initiated? The pressure is great. And they're expecting a lot at the highly selective colleges. So
is it unrealistic? It seems like there's some of these schools, it's like you have to walk on water to get into some of them. And these kids are young. I mean, it's like, you haven't invented this new thing, that you can write about.
Starting a business, split an atom. What else have you done?
I always say, if you haven't discovered a new molecule, then your odds of getting in are probably not. It takes a perfect storm is really what it gets down to. It takes a perfect storm that you are at the time the student applies, that they are what that particular college is looking for at that moment. Yeah. And that has to do with location. It has to do with GPA. It has to do with activities. If you play the piccolo and if they're looking for a flute player, you're out. I mean, that's just how it is. So the students have to realize that it's a tough process, and that just because they're not getting into what is considered to be a top tier school doesn't mean that they are not going to be a success in life. By any means. And so that's where I get back to finding an environment where the student can thrive and grow. Just because you attend a college of particular prestige does not mean that you are going to be a success in life.
That's a good point.
It's what you do once you get to where you go. Yeah. Right. And that's what kids need to understand.
Yeah.
We need to be kids. Oh my gosh, it's about balance. And in the summer, I think they need to, to play and have fun. I love for kids to work and have jobs. That's great. Be real people and figure out who they are. Mm-hmm. Some kids have the ability, because of the schools that they attend, to have exposure to fabulous research opportunities and internships. But a lot of that has to do with the high schools that they're attending also.
Yeah. Right.
So I think overall, the admission landscape requires a much more nuanced and strategic approach than it obviously used to. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that kids need to give up being kids either.
Right.
In my
Which
opinion.
is very hopeful. I think
I'm about balance. Yeah. I really think, and some kids, they are just achievers, and they just thrive on competition and studying, and they're champion athletes, and they end up getting into Stanford and just blowing the doors off of Stanford. Well, you know what? they've worked hard and that suits them, but that doesn't suit
Right.
everyone.
Right. Right.
And it doesn't mean that if you go to Iowa State that you're not going to be as successful as someone that goes to Stanford. I don't believe that at all. I believe that it's what you do when you're at the school that you attend.
Yeah.
And after, like,
You know.
how did you prepare yourself?
And after,
I do think that,
yes.
and I do think that, one of the things that you do so well is figure out that child, and really,
I try.
find
they're confusing.
They're hard. I mean, there is nothing easy about a teenager.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I have always had an affinity for teenagers. I just think they are, when I don't have to be their mother, they are so fun, and they're full of life, and once you can kind of break down the shell, they have just so many ideas and interests and wants. And
So Valerie, how do people find you? Like, how do people find you and connect with you? And what kind of investment what does that cost for a family to work with you? It feels like it's becoming big business. I live in California, and I'm hearing more and more about it.
Yeah.
So,
it is big business, and this is more of a passion project for me than it is a big business. Yes, it's a business, but I'm a one-woman show. I go to students' homes, or we meet via FaceTime if they don't live in the area. And I'm personally invested in my students. I do all the work with them. I don't have someone else that works on them with essays. I don't have someone else that does their activity list. So I'm a very, very much a hand holder. Not all practices are structured that way. I work solely on a packaged situation, and I price my business based on what I could afford to pay. That's really how will say, how do you price, what you do? And I know that I'm below market based on what a lot of other people are doing. And that's okay with me, because I really believe and I work with some students that are not able to afford me, and that's just fine.
So it really is a passion project for you, which is amazing.
It very much is. I find a lot of satisfaction in knowing the students that I get to know and seeing them grow and change. And that's the joy for me.
Oh, that's nice.
I love that.
But
with that, it comes a price. You have a select number of kids that you work with, and you take on every year, and you follow. So
I have a very small practice purposefully. I'm actually cutting it down from where I've been in the past. I've been doing this for a while, and I want to have a little bit more free time. So I do work with a small number of students, and it's all referral-based. I don't advertise. It's word of mouth.
I think it is difficult, right? Like, I remember in Grayson's class, there were some kids that applied to this one school that he was interested in, and they didn't even want to go there. And so
it's like I have a deal with my students that every school on their list has to be a school that they would be willing to attend.
Yeah.
If they aren't willing to attend, I don't want it on the list. And I also want to make sure that we have schools on that list of 6 to 8, max 10, that where they can have choices and that are obtainable. I don't want a list where there's one school that they have as a backup, and that's where they end up going. They work too hard to think that they're going to a backup school for their college if they don't get into these highly selective schools.
And also admission, you tell me, but are admissions people normally younger that read these applications?
They can be. It's a tiring process. And most of the time they're younger. The people in the executive positions are obviously a little bit older, but most of the time they're younger, and they pop around at different schools. I don't make a point of really getting to know admissions people. I don't want to cross that line and ever have that be a concern. I do a lot of reading. I walk campuses, but I don't have really relationships with admissions. A lot of college consultants do. That's just not something that I've chosen to focus on.
When you're working with a student and a family, what's the time commitment typically? Is it like once a month, twice a month? Is it
It depends on their age and stage of the game. So when we first start out, if they're freshmen, we meet about quarterly. When they get to be a sophomore, we get their testing plan in place. We're focusing on grades and activities. Starting junior year, we definitely ramp up. And then over the summer of junior year, we're meeting weekly. That's just how I found it works the best. So right now, for instance, where we're at, most of my students have finished their common application personal essay, and their common apps are sort of done draft one. And we're getting ourselves ready to think about getting our materials from school to get ready to submit this business, because I don't like to wait till the last moment. That's just not healthy.
Well, it doesn't feel good to be rushed, right? Especially something so big.
No. And it's a lot's up to the student. I mean, if they are hesitating doing what they need to be doing, then it's going to take a little bit longer. But if
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you ever meet with a student and a parent and be like, you know what, they might need a gap year. They might just need a year of like figuring out what they want to do. Or do you feel like once they come to you, they've decided they are college track, and that's, you don't worry about it?
Pretty much that's what they've decided. I have met with people, though, who have, I've really, I have the sense that maybe they don't need my services. They've done a lot of research on their own and they're moving along. And I think, well, gosh, do you really even need me? If you don't need me, then, you don't need me. Yeah. And that's fine too. I mean, I want to go where I'm most needed. Most of the time, when I look at a family, the most number of students I've worked with in a family, I've had 5 children in one family, and that was really fun. I camped out at their kitchen table for quite a long time, many years.
That's fun.
But, as you get to be the third child, let's say, you're a lot more clued into what's going on.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And the parents are more clued into what's going on. And so where I'm needed, the kids also have so much more knowledge about the whole process.
It's an amazing business.
It is.
And it's
fascinating.
Been hugely helpful to me. I find it has eliminated the pressure on me and the aggravation.
Well, high schoolers can be trying. Let's not forget.
Well, I think, like you said,
so
sometimes they want to talk to you. They'll be more willing to be more open with you than with me.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, if I can establish a rapport, my favorite are the 5-minute essays where they write them 5 minutes before I get there, and they think that I'm not going to know that that's exactly what I look at them and I'm like, yeah, no, this is not going to work. We're going to start over again. I've been doing this for a while. We'll get there. I am not going to let you turn this in. Come on. You worked so hard. If this is what you're giving me. No.
You're better than this.
You can do better.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a kid that comes to you and is like, this is a school I really, really want to go to? And you're like, no, it's not. This is not where you want to go.
I don't think I would say to them point blank, no, but I might offer them a lot of other options that might be more enticing so that they can. I also try to get to the root of that.
Yeah.
Like, why is that you feel like
there?
that? Is it? And then I always think girlfriend, family influence, what is it? Because there's usually something behind it. So I like to try and dig around and figure out what that is.
Yeah.
And then once we do that, we can usually sway them to something that might be a little bit more accommodating.
Well, you're a gem of a resource. And anyone who's had the pleasure of working with you, I know they feel the same way. You are amazing at what you do. And I personally am very appreciative. I know my kiddos have landed in their happy place. And it's a huge testament to your abilities. So thank you.
And I ditto that. Like, I think you're amazing. I like your positivity. Like, it's infectious.
It takes a lot of energy to do this job. If you're not positive with high schoolers, you are just dead in the water.
Yeah.
You have to be upbeat and positive, and most of the time they aren't, but eventually they will get there. So I just really try to be
Yeah.
positive
Yeah.
and say, choose joy, folks. That's the way to do it. And hopefully they'll buy into it eventually. I've been very blessed to work with really great students, and I carry them with me. I've learned a lot from them also.
Yeah.
So that's been a
Well,
real
thanks,
pleasure.
Valerie.
That's why I do it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, thank
Great.
you for coming and talking with us and helping me educate, like moving forward on this tricky process. And maybe Tim and I and Riley will be circling around very soon. If
You'll get there, Mama. You will. It's just baby steps, and then you'll blink and you'll say, "What happened?"
It all works out. Well,
Yeah,
thank
it
you for
does.
joining
All right.
us. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks so
Have
much,
a great
Valerie.
day.
You too. Take care.
Y'all, that was a really good conversation with a lot of good information.
I think
Big
so.
thank you to Valerie for sitting in with us today. If you are looking for an independent college consultant in your neck of the woods for your high schooler, do a quick Google search and options will pop up for where you live. This was a long episode today, but I found it to be full of just goodness. So hopefully you all enjoyed it. All right, y'all. I'm feeling hungry. What's for dinner?
To be honest, I have no idea. I just got home.
I know. It's so hard. It's
I might
hard to get
be
back
asleep.
in it. I mean, we have been like, woo.
Yeah.
Well, today we have company coming. So we're going to have like a big pasta meal, I think, tonight. I'm going to do like a pasta carbonara with like pancetta and peas. And
That sounds good.
Very unhealthy, but delicious. And I'll have good leftovers for lunch tomorrow. So I'll post the recipe at the end of, in the show notes for people. And we also will put in Val's email if anybody feels that they want to reach out to her and have a conversation.
Yes,
So
for sure.
That'll be good.
That pasta sounds really good.
Yeah.
I think my kids would like that. I don't make creamy pasta like that very often.
What are you having, Nancy?
Maybe that. I have no plan, which is not like me, but maybe that sounds really good.
It's easy.
And that sounds really good. We love pasta here, and I love one pot dishes. So I think I might try that.
This is about as easy as it gets. So, yeah.
Have a big salad and some bread and call it a day.
Call it a day.
Well, we want to thank you for listening to our podcast and letting us sisters jump into your day. Please make sure to follow, rate, and review us. We love your feedback. Have a great Labor Day weekend, everybody. Please be safe out there, okay? Sisters, out.